Hey there, I'm Lee Kellogg, and welcome to another nature journaling adventure. It's June. We are exploring Pine Nursery Park with some flowers we didn't see last year because this year's been wet and cool, and a lot of things popped up. A few flowers we looked at last year, but we're looking at them again this year, as always, because wildflowers are fun. So let's go explore. Found this little stand of coyote tobacco, which is in the Nicotina family. And I'm in Pine Nursery Park and finding all kinds of things that I didn't know bloomed here. And you can see we're in a rocky, sandy area. And there's quite a bit of this growing in this little outcropping that I haven't seen this flower anywhere else in the park in my daily wanderings. So we've got a long tubular flowers here, quite nice and tubular, and leaves down along the stems, not too much at the base, growing in a very dry habitat. And turning right around from the Nicotina is yarrow that's in bloom, and I've got a little butterfly on the center flower there. This sort of sandy, deserty looking area can look quite barren till you start getting a little closer, and we've got the yarrow that we were just looking at there. There's the yarrow. And we come down and we've got this lovely little guy. We've got our flicksweed that we saw in an earlier video. And there are all kinds of, I've forgotten the name of the purple one. I'll have to look it up and I'll put it in the video, but they're like all over the place, growing just all over, scattered, and they don't look too noticeable until you start looking. And here we have a beard tongue. This guy's nice blue, purple flowers, sort of tubular. Just growing up out of the base. We've got a clumping of leaves here, a few with the stem coming up, a few leaves, little tubular flowers. Just a lovely purpley blue flower. This is the only clump I have seen in the park. And so that sort of goes along with the Nicotina that we looked at just a few minutes ago, the white flower, that this spring, because it's been so wet, we have some unusual wildflowers blooming that maybe in past years just the leaves would set up and not the flowers. So we had this guy last year. This is a sulfur buckwheat. Yellow blossoms, definitely typical of the buckwheat family, sort of umbrella-like flowers up here and the rounder leaves down here. Very common, often used in landscaping because it's a good hardy water-resistant plant. And this grouping over here looks like the deer have browsed all the blossoms off because they're all cut off right at the top of the stem, so it looks like the flowers got eaten. And here we have another buckwheat. This one is white. So obviously it's not a sulfur, which is yellow, but once again, the umbrella-like flowers and the leaves are very similar to the sulfur buckwheat that we looked at. This is just one clump growing on a sandy, rocky hillside. has picked up. So I'm hoping I've got my microphone out of the wind a bit. This yellow flower that we're looking at here is called Black Medic, M-E-D-I-C-K. Never knew what it was. It just sort of looks like a weed. And you know, sometimes if you look at the weeds, they're the most interesting thing out there. Like we did the whole series on the flicks weed and all the other weeds, and here's another one. And it's growing in amongst some vetch, hairy vetch. Right there's the vetch with the pretty purple flowers. This is Bladder Campion. And we're right underneath some ponderosa pines. And this guy, trying to get a little closer. The sunlight's making the color look a little weird, but a real pretty flower. I'm very bulbous, that's why it's called a bladder. It looks like it's Bladder Campion. It's in the Campion family, and it's got the bladder-like blossoms. So we're doing the nature journaling for the flowers we just saw in Pine Nursery Park. I've done my rough blue sketches. I like to use the Prismacolor Color Erase. It's a non-photo blue pencil. It's easily found like at Dick Blick, Jerry's Artorama. Just about everybody has them. It's a pale blue colored pencil that if you photocopy it, it disappears, but it also is a nice base to work from if you need to do your outlining, which a lot of times I like to do with my plants. Sometimes, as I did on this page, I just paint them. Today, I feel like drawing them. So I've sketched them out, and I will use the non-photo blue many times when I'm working like with architecture and that sort of thing. So it's a really handy pencil to have. And now I'm outlining with a super fine tip platinum pen. This is a cheap or inexpensive, like 20 bucks from Goulet pens. And there's no affiliation with any of these companies that I'm talking about at the moment. I like Goulet pens, family run, mail order, fountain pen company. And I have a super fine tip on this pen, and I'm using the Noodler's Polar Brown. It says Polar, but it's a brown pen, or brown ink, that while it's not listed as waterproof, on most papers, it ultimately dries fairly waterproof. So I like that. And I like using the sepia brown colors in my drawings. And I'll add blacks in shadows and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking I have to take a break and fill my pen because it is being a little recalcitrant. So I'm going to stop and fill my pen. All right, we are back. Let's see if this pen wants to behave now. Sometimes fountain pens will do that. They'll just stop or clog, or if they need to be fed, they will tell you. It's one of the drawbacks of working with fountain pen, but I really, really like working with a fountain pen as compared to a felt tip nib, like with the Micron or the Faber-Castell or the any of them. Any of the pens that are out there. They're fun, they're nice, they're easy for traveling, but it's just something about using a metal nib when you draw. So this is the Nicotina. This one I'm working on is Beard's Tongue. And I know this one's got a few more leaves going up. And Beard's Tongue has the leaf clump at the bottom. And it was a nice stalk going up with the blue, purple flowers and the nice deep sort of trumpety with a mouth. And I am going to go in and add color to this. And now I've got 2 buckwheats left. This is the sulfur buckwheat with its round, both of the buckwheats have round leaves versus like these oblong leaves. And the buckwheats all clump, the leaves all clump and sort of form a mound. And the flowers are umbrella-like. In their clumping. They're little round blossoms that form round umbrellas. This one's sulfur, so the blossoms are going to be yellow. And then over here I have my white buckwheat, which I never really got a good name on. I'm going to have to find it. Nice clumpy mass on a hillside, on a rocky hillside, rocky sandy hillside. With the stalks coming up. And these guys are white, so they're going to be a little more difficult to illustrate. So that's why I've sort of got these rough outlines here of these white ones. We'll add more text in a bit. Get my brush. And remember, watercolor dries lighter than what you put it when you put it on the page. And you're hearing my neighbor pull things out of his garage because it's summertime and I have my work window open. Maybe that's a little better color, a little sagey. Sometimes it's hard to get a good sagey green going with these, with the desert plants. You'd think after 20 years of painting plants in Santa Fe, I'd have it down to a science, but I still don't. The desert plants have their own color palette. And what I've done here is I'm taking phthalo blue and quinacridone pink to actually add color to these blossoms. I've got to close the window because it looks like my neighbor is totally emptying his garage. But it's Saturday. So I actually mixed a little bit of the color I wanted down here at the bottom of my page, and I'm picking it up from there. And I'm going to go back and add a little bit of blue highlights because these guys definitely had a little more blue than purple. But it's a strong combo of blue, purple flowers here. And if I need to, I can go back with my pen and add in more details as needed. And this was a surprise, this beard tongue. He didn't bloom last year. So I would look back at some of the flowers I drew last year, and the nicotina and the beard tongue were not in bloom, nor was this buckwheat. Those were things that I don't have in my sketchbook for the flowers for last year. So it's interesting going back to the same place and seeing what the differences are year to year, and how the environment changes, how a wet spring makes things different versus a dry year, or several dry years, and what blooms and what doesn't bloom. And like this year it's been wet. The frogs aren't around by the house as much. They're around. I hear them every once in a while, or did earlier in the spring. All right, so I've got white flowers that I need to emphasize. And the way I tend to do that is to put a little gray around the flowers themselves. So leaving them white, and grabbing a little bit of like lunar black, moon glow, not lunar black, moon glow. And one of the things I'm going to do is get this paper wet first with a clean brush. So that the black will flow a bit, or the gray. Because it's easier to paint in white, and if you paint with water, if you make a mistake, you just let it dry. But we're going to tap in the gray here, the moon glow. And I suddenly have flowers that are standing out from the page. Pretty cool trick. Now let's do it with the nicotina flowers. I'm using a fresh brush for this. This is like a brand new brush, and you can see the difference. This is a brush I've used and used and used. This is a brand new brush. Look at the tip. You can see the difference on the tip there of both of those brushes. So I actually need to replace some of my brushes because I have worn them out. And it's not something you think about when you start painting, but you do wear your brushes out. Just that friction over time on the paper will eat away the brushes. And it doesn't matter if it's synthetic or a natural bristle. So I've actually just go more towards natural bristles, or not natural bristles, I'm sorry, synthetics, because I don't need little critters giving up their lives for giving up their fur for my paintbrush, when a synthetic will work just fine. This is called wet on wet technique that I'm doing right here. And moon glow is a granulating pigment, so it will form a little bit of granules as it dries, which I like. I like that look. I think this area right in here was a little dry. I don't even know if I should be using green. I probably should be using more brown because these are all sort of deserty critters, plants. There we go. There's the plants for this session of Nature Journaling Adventures. I will add some detail on this guy to give to, like I did here, to individualize the flower blossoms. So thank you for joining me on this little nature journaling adventure where we looked at some wildflowers in Pine Nursery Park in Bend, Oregon, and at the journal and the drawings, and talked about how you should be out doing this and being creative and doing all of that. So if you want more, subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm always producing new videos. I've also got shorts up. My website, leekellogg.com, is where you can subscribe to my newsletter. You can find my travel journaling survey because we're going to go someplace next year, 2024. And if you're watching this after 2024, I am sure we're going somewhere else in the future too, because that's what I want to do. And I know that's what you all want to do. So do the survey, no obligation. It just gives me an idea of where you want to go. And it's helping me build an email list of people who are interested in traveling. So sign up for the newsletter, take the travel journal survey, and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you again soon. Be creative and get outside.